But right now, Mark Halperin is with us. He is the author of Game Change, or the co-author of Game Change, Obama and the Clintons, McCain and Palin, and the Race of a Lifetime, published by HarperCollins. This book doing very well, and no doubt making some good money for you, Mark. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. And of course, I just want to say we're all concerned about the folks in Haiti and hope they get enough help as quick as possible.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you they won't, tragically, and we all do need to pitch in, because that country is so lacking in even basic infrastructure that it's going to be difficult to. And it's such a shame. I mean, this is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, but that's a whole other topic. Your book, Game Change, I rather than going through the salacious, let's talk about Elizabeth Edwards, or let's talk about Sarah Palin, or let's talk about John McCain, or Bill Clinton, or Harry Reid, et cetera, because I think you guys have been out there in the media enough now that, in all probability, our listeners are completely familiar with all of the highlights that have been dropped. But I want to say, first of all, having spent a fair amount of time with your book, I think this is some brilliant writing. You guys write a narrative as if it was fiction. It's compelling. It's hard to put down. Very good storytelling. It is about the celebrity culture of politics. I didn't find any substantive discussion in the book. I confess I have not read the entire book, but I've read a good chunk of it about issues. And I'm wondering, in your mind, as an actual reporter who has co-produced a book that's essentially, an extension of the National Enquirer, if you think that the book is an indictment of American journalism that focuses on fluff at the expense of issues, or is it an indictment of the American people who want to be titillated instead of informed?
Well, Tom, you said two things about the book there. One I'm very grateful for, and one I strongly disagree with. So let me unpack that. You
Sure.
talked about how there's great writing in it and great storytelling, and I really appreciate that, because John Heilman and I set out in Game Change to write in a novelistic, a cinematic way. We've actually sold the book even before we were done to HBO to be a movie, but not fiction. But everything in it is well-sourced and factual. But this was the race of a lifetime for a lot of reasons, including the characters. When you have a presidential campaign where America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani is about the fifth most interesting candidate in the race, you're dealing with a cast of candidates and spouses who are interesting, real-life characters whose roles in the campaign were just fascinating. They're fascinating as people, and the plot was fascinating. You said it was salacious and like the National Enquirer. I have to disagree with you.
Well, your John Edwards stuff actually started in the National Enquirer.
Well, certainly we cover that part of it, but these are...
And you start by quoting them.
Well, it's a phenomenon in the campaign. You can't ignore the media that's around us.
Sure.
The stories we tell in the campaign, many of them do involve people's personal lives. Many of them do involve extramarital affairs. Many of them involve people's tempers. These are not details we chose because they were salacious. We left a lot out of the book, frankly, that if we had been using a lower level of standards of sourcing and appropriateness, that we would have included. What we included are things that affected the real lives of these candidates, and therefore the course of who would become president. You look at Barack Obama, for instance. He and Michelle, during the campaign, working together in unison as a team, all the major opponents, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Cindy McCain, and the Edwardses, were dealing with very
basically dysfunctional marriages, it seemed, from the book.
Very serious scrutiny of their personal lives. And so we don't want people to think of this as a salacious book. We want them to think of it as a human book, an interesting book, a book about famous Americans and the behind the scenes of what really happened. They just happen to all be involved in a presidential campaign.
Isn't though, at the end of the day, Mark Halperin, author of Game Change, isn't every person who ever ran for public office a character? I mean, the type of person who seeks high office very often tends to be, a little defective or a little off or a little or bigger than life, larger than life.
Well,
let me just finish this, because I think you may even be willing to go here with me. I don't know. I don't know how much time you spent in the UK. I've spent a fair amount of time there over the last 30, 40 years.
I was in London for New Year's.
Okay. But the tabloid media in the UK really dominates the media in the UK. there is much more coverage of people's personal lives, sex scandals, the royal family, that kind of thing, particularly when Diana was alive, but I mean even now, than there is of substantive issues. And there's a lot of people in the UK who are kind of bemoaning the state of British journalism as a consequence. And it seems that we're moving in that direction in the United States as well. We've become a celebrity culture in America, and our politicians are our celebrities. I mean, our president, we don't separate out head of state from head of government like the UK does, where they have a queen and a prime minister. We combine them in the president. And so at a certain level, I suppose you could argue for the celebrity, the head of stateness, the grand representative of the nation as president, in which case your book actually in some ways becomes even more important. And yet, at the same time, there's this celebrity culture thing. There's this American Idol thing that seems to echo through American journalism that concerns me. Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, it's not a policy book. John Hartmann and I are interested in policy, and we write and talk a lot about policy as part of our daily journalism. The book we were trying to write was the human story. How did these people in the race of a lifetime relate to their spouses, relate to the people they are working for, think about the other candidates, the relationship, for instance, between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, one of the most fascinating relationships I've ever covered in politics, starting out very supportive in the Senate, and even before Obama got to the Senate, then the tension between them as they were rival candidates, and then culminating in Hillary Clinton accepting the job of Secretary of State. These are interesting people doing interesting things with complicated and fascinating relationships. I'm all for people reading policy.
I get that, John. And John, we have about 30 seconds. Just a quick question: if David Gregory, for example, were to ask a really hard question on Meet the Press, causing a politician, an A-list politician, say, "I'll never come back," he might lose his job like Helen Thomas did when she went after George W. Bush. Isn't there a problem of the press and the politicians they're covering getting too close?
That's always an issue, and I think one of the things journalists have to do is always be careful about establishing good working relationships, but not too close.
Do you think your book might blow that up or might help that?
I think our book is a good representation of what it means in the modern journalistic age where everything is done quick and rapid fire. The benefits of doing over 300 interviews of great length, going back to sources repeatedly to make sure the story is right, accurate, and also as interesting as possible.
Mark Halperin, the book is Game Change. Mark, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks.
Good talking with you.